Okay, we will now move to that part of the agenda which I'm sure will be brief and won't raise many questions in the media. Mr. Cooke, you want to tell us what the budget is going to look like for the coming year?
I sure do. All righty. I've got a top landfills and feral cats.
Good luck.
Each spring, it is my responsibility and privilege to present the Board of Commissioners and citizens of Wake County a balanced budget for the next fiscal year. Before I get into next year's recommended budget, I thought some context and perspective would be helpful. The bottom line is things are better in Wake County. But better is a relative term. 4 years ago, when I presented the recommended budget in May of 2008, we talked of slowing revenue growth, but we really could not have anticipated what was in store for us for the next 4 years. But things are better in Wake County. Employment growth has occurred over the past 3 years. More people have jobs this year than last year, and that same trend has been in place for 3 years. On the other hand, 4 years later, we have not yet returned to the number of our citizens who are employed in July of 2008. And while unemployment has declined over the past 2 years, again reflecting that things are better, it is still twice the rate from 2007. But as you can see, things are better in Wake County as compared to the state, the nation, or other urban counties. In the 2008 budget message, I mentioned a slowing revenue picture, one in which we revised our property tax revenue growth rate based on slowing building permit data. But building permits for the months of January through April 2012 are 23% higher than the same period in 2011. You see, things are better. However, in comparison to 2008, permits are down 40%. We expect the tax base to grow 1.25% next year. This is the highest growth rate we have used in the past 3 years. You see, things are better. This will yield an additional $10 million next year. The growth rate back in 2008 was just over 5%. Which would bring in an additional $38 million in new property tax revenue that year. Things are better in Wake County. Recent trends have shown that the economic situation seems to be stabilizing. As such, I am cautiously optimistic that our revenue picture. I'm cautiously optimistic about our revenue picture in 2013. The number of jobs have nearly returned to the level prior to the recession. Real estate development is showing signs of return through new building permits and an increase in the revenue for property and real estate transfer taxes compared to last year. And sales tax revenue increased this past year, reversing a 2-year decline, and is projected to grow again next year. Wake County, this is a unique place. Things are better here. While a recession was underway and revenues were shrinking, Wake County was growing. Since 2008, Wake County has added 91,500 citizens. Think of that. Since the recession began, we have added more citizens than the combined population of Garner, Wake Forest, Knightdale, Morrisville, and Roseville. Things are better, but we're at a very different place than we could have ever predicted 4 years ago. We are serving more citizens with fewer public resources and fewer employees than before. 3 key principles have guided and continue to guide the decision-making process. Focus on core services and priorities. Realign existing resources to meet priority needs without raising the property tax rate. And maintain our long-term planning focus. The recommended fiscal year 2013 budget reflects these principles. The recommended budget for 2013 is $941.5 million and maintains the property tax rate at 53.4 cents. The budget is $10.6 million lower than the current year budget and reflects a realignment of fiscal resources due to the mental health merger with Durham County. As you well know, the state has required local management entities to merge and consolidate. Wake County's LME will merge with Durham County to form Alliance Behavioral Health Care effective July 1, 2012. A total of $32.6 million in federal and state revenue and associated expenditures will be removed from the county budget, as these revenues will go directly to Alliance Behavioral Health Care. Additionally, 109 3/4 full-time equivalent positions will be reduced from the county payroll. So while the total budget declines, the 2013 budget still represents new revenues totaling $22 million more than the 2012 budget. And again, this year the recommended budget does not include a property tax increase. The fiscal year 2013 recommended budget accomplishes this board's number one goal of developing a budget that does not include a tax increase while maintaining, and even some instances increasing funding for our highest priorities, education and public safety. As mentioned, revenues are growing by $22 million. The main drivers are property and sales tax. These revenue sources will see growth in fiscal year 13 when compared to the current year budget. As mentioned, the property tax base is projected to grow by 1.25%, which will generate approximately $10 million in new property tax revenue. This growth is good news, but still is not as strong as it was at pre-recession levels of 5 to 6% growth. Both real property such as land and houses and some personal property such as vehicles are subject to property taxes. Vehicle tax revenue in fiscal year 13 will increase for two reasons. More vehicles are being purchased and used vehicle values are stabilizing. Now, sales tax. This is the second year in a row that we are seeing increases in sales tax revenue. As such, we are estimating sales tax in fiscal year 2013 to increase at a conservative rate of 2.5%. The result of this is more than $9 million in additional revenue from the 2012 adopted budget. Other revenue increases include $750,000 in additional EMS fees, which are recommended to increase and be tied to Medicare rate changes, and $1.4 million in revenues from the state for keeping sentenced misdemeanants in the county detention center. As I mentioned, the recommended budget for fiscal year 2013 is $941.5 million, an increase of $22 million from the current year once we adjust for the mental health merger. The increased expenditures are reflected in the county's priorities, primarily education and public safety. And you can see from that from that chart how that $22 million is allocated. We'll start with education. Education funding is increasing by $4.1 million in the recommended budget for a total of $334.5 million. This increase is shared by the Wake County Public School System and Wake Technical Community College. Over the past 3 years, we have held the funding constant for schools. The overall county budget decreased, but funding for education remained flat. The 2013 recommended budget increases the appropriation to the Wake County Public School System to $318.3 million, an increase of $3.9 million. The appropriation increase is tied to the growth in our assessed value, which is 1.25% over the fiscal year 2012 adopted budget. While this does not match the Board of Education's requests, the recommendation shares the growth in our property tax base. Also included in the county budget is another $7.5 million in support of schools for school health nurses, school resource officers, school-based mental health, and other services. The 2013 recommended budget allocation for Wake Technical Community College uses the same approach towards funding. The fiscal year 2013 budget adds approximately $200,000 for Wake Tech, for total funding of almost $16.2 million, and represents a 1.25% increase. The fiscal year 2013 recommended budget includes $5.9 million in additional support for our new criminal justice facilities and public safety services. This amount includes $2.1 million to provide a full year cost related to opening the detention center expansion at Hammond Road, $1.1 million to support the opening of the new Justice Center, which is scheduled to open in June of 2013. This amount includes the partial year cost of 15 positions in the sheriff's office, 6.5 positions for building operations and general services, and contract security. Also included is funding for one-time equipment and startup costs, such as vehicles and equipment. Additionally, the Wake County Sheriff's Office is participating in the statewide misdemeanor confinement program, which provides housing for those with sentences from 91 to 180 days. This will provide the county additional revenue of $1.1 million above the expenses to operate the program. The fiscal year 2013 recommended EMS budget reflects a full year of funding for the centralized billing for Wake EMS, Cary EMS, Eastern Wake EMS, and Apex EMS. In total, the EMS system budget is increasing by $2.1 million. The increase reflects additional funding for the EMS system to convert 3 24-hour ambulance units to 12-hour units and additional funds for the annualization of contract agency budgets. The recommended budget increases the transfer to debt and capital by $6 million. This is in keeping with our policy to dedicate 15.5 cents of the property tax rate to our debt and capital program. In addition, part of the growth in sales tax revenue, as required by state law, must be dedicated to school debt and capital. In fiscal year 2013, we estimate our debt service expenditures will be $235.4 million, with approximately 77% in support of the Wake County Public School System. The Human Services budget increases by approximately $1 million. That's less than 1% of their overall budget. This includes increases for the contract with Holly Hill Hospital and annualization of our contract with Daymark to operate a wing of the Wakebrook campus. Of course, the budget reflects the transfer of funds to Alliance Behavioral Healthcare, and in 2013, staff will be working with UNC Healthcare on the transition of behavioral health services. For Board of Elections, the recommended budget includes $2.1 million in funding for early voting sites at the equivalent service level to the 2008 general election and while taking population growth into consideration. There is also additional funding for voter equipment maintenance and additional election operating funds. Given the nature of election cycles, annual budgets can change year to year, and the net increase in the Board of Elections budget is $1.24 million over the current year budget. In the end, other than the departments already mentioned, most departments and outside agencies will decrease in funding, or remain flat, or will grow by less than 2%. As the chart illustrates, only a handful of departments will see growth greater than 2%. On the employee side, employees have been amazing over the past 3 years. They have been engaged in discussions and have participated in the budget changes that have occurred over the past number of years. Since the fall of 2008, the county has imposed a hiring freeze and a critical evaluation of all positions. For many employees, this has meant increased workloads with fewer and fewer co-workers. Reductions in the past year and in the upcoming budget reflect continued change in a smaller overall workforce. In the current fiscal year, we have had a net reduction in 55 full-time equivalent positions. The 13 budget adds positions for the Hammond Road Detention Center, the new Justice Center, some paramedics, and technology positions, but overall, with reductions in other service areas and the creation of Alliance Behavioral Health Care, the workforce will be reduced by another 86 positions. In last year's budget, we were able to fund a 2% performance pay increase, which was the first pay increase since 2009. The 2013 recommended budget includes a performance pay increase budget, again at a 2% level, and the budget also sets aside $700,000 for increases in the employer's share of health insurance. Last week, we held a work session and discussed the debt and capital finance model and reviewed the 2013 to 2019 Community Improvement Plan, or CIP. The capital plan includes a recommended $200 million general obligation bond referendum for Wake Technical Community College this fall. And based on reviewing the county's current and planned debt service obligations, there is sufficient capacity available to finance Wake Tech's next building program without a tax increase for capital. The county funds its debt service obligations through two major sources: a portion of the property tax plus a portion of sales taxes. As I mentioned before, the 2013 recommended budget includes an increase of $6 million in the transfer for debt and capital. The credit rating agencies reaffirmed Wake County's AAA credit rating this past spring. The county continues to meet its debt service fund balance targets and adhere to our other financial policies that are necessary to maintain our AAA rating. This translates into a lower cost of capital for county school and community college facilities. The Board of Education is currently planning the next steps for a future building program, and a specific plan is not detailed at this time. However, the county will continue to work with the Wake County Public School System regarding a future referendum for schools. The 2013 to 2019 CIP totals $551.2 million, of which $76.7 million is for projects in the upcoming fiscal year. Capital facilities and adequate infrastructure are critical for the county's continuing growth. The CIP includes construction and renovation of county facilities, information technology infrastructure, affordable housing, protection of open space, and responsible stewardship of existing facilities. It also reflects a revised schedule for new library projects and funding for the replacement of infrastructure for public safety communications. Outside of the budgets we have already discussed, the county also administers special revenue and enterprise funds, including solid waste, the South Wake Landfill Partnership, and the Fire Tax District. First, solid waste. The solid waste budget maintains the household disposal fee at $20. Revenues generated by the fee fund convenience centers, household hazardous waste disposal, environmental education programs, and the county's litter control program. Wake County also administers the South Wake Landfill in partnership with 11 municipalities. The recommended budget maintains the tipping fees for South Wake Landfill at $30 per ton and $36 per ton at the East Wake Transfer Station. This is also the first budget year in which the South Wake Landfill will be generating revenue from the landfill gas-to-energy system. 50% of the revenue is recommended to go toward the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund, and the other 50% is recommended to be allocated to the general fund. The Fire Tax District. The Fire District provides fire protection services in the unincorporated areas of Wake County and in the town of Wendell. The Wake County Fire Tax District, the recommended budget for fiscal year 13 is $20.2 million and maintains the existing tax rate at 8 cents. The recommended budget reflects an adjustment to the distribution of revenue allocated between operating and capital. Currently, 84% of the revenues are allocated to the operating budget and 16% is allocated to capital. Due to increasing operating expenditures, the allocation is recommended to change to 86% to the operating and 14% to capital. Staff's recommendation is slightly different than the recommendation of the Fire Commission, and staff will continue to work with the Fire Commission on the necessary changes to the capital budget and on consolidation strategies in order to manage long-term operating costs. In summary, the recommended fiscal year 2013 budget, again, is $941.5 million and maintains the property tax rate at 53.4 cents. Things are better in Wake County. We have weathered a very different and very difficult 4 years. And when possible, we use the economic changes to our advantage. We built and financed the Detention Center expansion and Justice Center, taking advantage of the lowest interest rates in decades and low construction costs. We also focused on our priorities and core services. This budget reflects priorities. Just as we have done the last 3 years, we have reallocated resources in order to provide additional funding for our highest priorities of public safety and education. This was a difficult budget development process, but we believe the reductions and reallocations are sustainable and reasonable. We are proud to again present a budget without a property tax rate increase. Everyone has worked extremely hard to arrive at where we are today, and we look forward to working with you, the Board of Commissioners, and the Wake County citizens on the 2013 budget. Things are better in Wake County. Citizens are encouraged to offer feedback on the recommended budget. There are a number of ways in which citizens can be involved. Immediately following the conclusion of the budget presentation, the budget will be posted online at www.wakegov.com, and copies will be available at all public libraries tomorrow. Citizens can visit wakegov.com/budget to learn about the budget process, read answers to frequently asked questions, and watch videos about the county budget and local economy. Citizens can also email comments to budget@wakegov.com, leave a voicemail at 919-856-5433, or speak at one of the 2 public hearings. The next step will be for you to hold those public hearings on Monday, June 4th, 2012, at 2 p.m. here in this boardroom, and at 7 p.m. the night of June 4th at the Wake County Commons. As in past years, you will hold a work session dedicated to the budget scheduled for Monday, June 11th, and on Monday, June 18th, you'll be asked to adopt the fiscal year budget. With that, we present the recommended budget for 2013. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you know what? You should have had Dr. Myers read that, and we'd have been done a lot quicker.
We've been out by now.
We'd be finished. Okay, questions on the budget? Anybody have anything y'all want to ask? Ms. Portman?
Mr. Cook, good job, and as always, in terms of putting together a very complex document. When we were talking about the increase in overall revenue, could you just go over the $20 million increase in terms of what are the sources of that? 'Cause I didn't really see that.
I'm going to put it in 4 categories. Property tax is about $10 million. Sales tax will represent $9 million. The money from the state for the misdemeanor program will net about $1.1 million, and then additional EMS fees are about $750,000. So that should take us north of 20 to 21 million, and the rest is all the other sources.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Bryan?
Now that we've heard from our most esteemed, very professional county manager, and we received the recommended fiscal year 2013 budget for consideration, and that would approve the following. 1, holding a public hearing on the budget during the Board of Commissioners regular meeting on Monday, June the 4th at 2 p.m. in the boardroom of the courthouse, and also at 7 p.m. on that day at the Commons Building. 2, holding a budget work session on Monday, June the 11th at 9 a.m. And 3, considers the budget for adoption on Monday, June the 18th during the Board of Commissioners regular meeting, which begins at 2 p.m.
Moved. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion? Yes, there is. 2 things, Mr. Cook, if you wouldn't mind. There has been 2 questions publicly debated recently. I'd love to have your comments on the issue of the county's unfunded liabilities, which some people seem to think we're carrying some liabilities that we should not.
Sure. I had that question from the News Observer as well. I think it relates to a number that would express our unfunded liabilities for employee health insurance well into the future. And it's a fairly big number. I want to say 190 million. 192 million. My response to that is the county responsibly funds retiree health insurance on a pay-as-you-go basis, meaning the amount of money that we are obligated to pay in any given year we have funded on a pay-as-you-go, which a cash basis. It was my response that for us to set aside $192 million for an obligation we're already taking care of would be incredibly irresponsible. The idea being that we would tax the citizens in order to generate that money just to set it on the sideline, to me did not sound like a responsible action. Furthermore, this board took action about a year ago to cap the liability anyway. We recommended, and this board approved, that employees that were hired after July 1 of 2011 were no longer eligible to receive retiree health insurance. So not only are we funding our obligation on a pay-as-you-go basis, this board has taken action to cap the liability in the future anyway.
Okay. Second question is has to do with our debt and our debt service and the amount of debt we have. What's our alternative if we don't carry debt when we have schools and libraries and Wake Tech to take care of?
Well, again, my response was I think this board has handled that in a very responsible way. We have dedicated revenue sources that we set aside for debt and capital. And I described, for example, with those policies in place, we'll dedicate another $6 million to our debt and capital fund. That way it ensures that we have the ability to pay for capital projects and debt on an ongoing basis. Now let me also make the comment, over the last 12 years, our voters have approved 11 bond referenda. So this board and our community has approved putting into place these projects in order to keep our community advancing forward, since we have been and continue to be a growing county even during a recession. So the responsible thing to do is to invest in the infrastructure, put into place the policies and guidelines to generate the revenue, and then particularly with voter-approved bond authority, actually to meet those project commitments and meet the infrastructure needs of the community.
Well, and we have reissued a number of those bonds to take advantage of lower interest rates, which has also saved taxpayers
That's
money.
a good point. The same thing, over the last 4 years, we've refinanced all the debt we could possibly do to take advantage of low interest rates.
Yeah. I appreciate you answering those questions, and I appreciate the work staff has done to put this together. It's we will get into discussions of it, but as for some time now, y'all have done an excellent job, especially in the last couple of years facing hard economic times, and I appreciate those answers. Joe?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to also compliment our staff as you have. I mean, whenever it was 2008 when Mr. Cooke he saw the beginning of this economic collapse, and he reacted to that, and it's kept our county strong to be able to move forward with a number of items and get those done. And that forward visionary leadership along with the board has helped Wake County quite a bit. And I'm particularly happy, Mr. Chairman, that you asked for those two items, which frankly I feel bad that I did not ask to be addressed earlier, because the Wake County is one of, I don't know if it's 22 counties now, but there's a small number of counties nationwide out of 3,068 counties that are AAA rated by Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch. And that's due, again, to great fiscal management by the staff as well as this board. And some of the assertions that were made during the election season, frankly, were irresponsible on the part of the advertiser and the person making those assertions. And that once you are in the position of governing, I can only hope that they will be as successful as moving a county forward and making the investments that are voter approved on building schools and building facilities and maintaining a tax rate to serve their citizens and make those high priority calls that you have to make in any type of economic environment.
All right. Mr. Cook, thank you.
Thank you.